Are you black? Then you might want to think twice before booking a trip to these destinations. Sounds extreme? It might, but this warning comes from numerous travelers who've had unforgettable experiences for all the wrong reasons. Suspicious glances, random security checks, an icy silence as you walk down the street. You thought you were on vacation, but instead, it feels like you're under surveillance. Travel isn't always about freedom. For black travelers, sometimes it's a test of resilience. In today's video, we're pulling back the curtain on 12 cities that may appear to be paradise, but hide invisible traps for people of color. The truth may not be glamorous, but it needs to be told. Number 12. Moscow, Russia. Cold looks and invisible social walls. Not everyone is welcomed in Moscow, even if you've got a passport, visa, and a warm smile. For black visitors, the city's stunning architecture can sometimes feel like a facade covering an unsettling undercurrent of suspicion and exclusion. Unlike major Western European cities like London or Paris, where multiculturalism is gradually woven into the social fabric, Moscow remains relatively closed off to unfamiliar faces, especially black individuals. International reports indicate that the black population in Moscow is very small, mainly composed of African students or migrant workers. What earns Moscow a place on this list isn't just the unspoken bias, but also the very real threat of racially motivated attacks by far-right groups. More concerning is the response, or lack thereof, from law enforcement. According to Human Rights Watch, black residents and visitors often encounter discrimination and even violence from extremist factions. Incidents where victims are denied the ability to file complaints or are given the runaround when seeking legal help are unfortunately not uncommon. One time I went to a grocery store and I was the only one asked by security to open my bag. That's when it hit me. I wasn't seen as a tourist here, just a stranger. Linda, a Kenyan student at Moscow State University, 2023. Unlike many European countries with clear anti-discrimination laws and transparent legal systems, Russia lacks a solid legal framework to effectively address hate crimes. Despite repeated alerts from global human rights organizations such as Human Rights Watch and Amnesty International, the Russian government often downplays the severity of these issues. What about you? Have you ever felt shut out of a place simply because of the color of your skin? If so, how did you cope? It's no surprise Moscow tops this list of 12 cities where black travelers are unwelcome. The harsh travel truth no one talks about. But next, we'll head to a city you'd never expect. Number 11. Rome, Italy. Ancient beauty can't hide modern prejudices. Being followed in a store, avoided on public transport, looked at like a stranger in a crowd. For many black travelers in Rome, these aren't isolated incidents, they're common experiences. I was just browsing handbags, I hadn't even touched anything, but the shop assistant kept shadowing me like I was about to steal something. Aminata, a French tourist of Senegalese descent, sharing her experience on Via del Corso, 2000. Rome receives a significant number of immigrants, particularly from North Africa and sub-Saharan regions. However, the city's demographic shifts haven't always come with cultural adaptation. In certain local communities, this has fostered latent xenophobic attitudes, not always violent, but strong enough to make black individuals feel marked and out of place. A 2023 Pew Research survey found that over 50% of Italians expressed concerns about the cultural impact of African immigrants, well above the European average. These aren't just numbers. They reflect a truth you can feel in the air while walking through central Rome with darker skin than the average passerby. Numerous African-descendant tourists have shared stories of being softly surveilled in luxury boutiques or receiving noticeably colder service at restaurants, even when they're polite, well-dressed, and following all the rules. What's more telling is that these things rarely happen to white tourists in the same situations. Rome may be one of the busiest tourist destinations in Europe, but that popularity comes with its darker sides. Petty crimes are rampant, especially in crowded areas like Termini Station, Campo dei Fiori Market, and the surroundings of Vatican City. Local law enforcement in Rome is often described as less than welcoming to foreigners, and black travelers in particular frequently report being randomly stopped for ID checks or approached with unwarranted suspicion. While these encounters may not be overtly dangerous, the emotional toll of cold stares and implicit bias can rob a trip of the comfort it should offer. If you've been to Rome, how did you feel about how locals and services treated black tourists? Was it cultural misunderstanding or something more subtle, like ingrained bias? Number 10. Paris, France. The city of light and its untold shadows. In Paris, skin color alone can be enough to get you stopped in the street. No explanation, no suspicious behavior required. For many black travelers, it's not what you do that draws attention. It's simply who you are. What should be a relaxing visit often turns into a mental tightrope walk. For black tourists, Paris isn't always a city of carefree exploration. It's a place where constant vigilance becomes part of the experience. And the worst part? These encounters don't just happen. They happen legally and repeatedly. France doesn't collect official racial data in civil statistics under the principle of universal equality. But ironically, this policy often hinders efforts to document and address racial bias. Whether a French citizen or a visiting tourist, black individuals are more likely to attract suspicious looks in luxury stores or receive excessive scrutiny from mall security. Independent reports have repeatedly found that French police disproportionately stop and question people of color, often without clear cause, and far more frequently than they do white individuals. These issues are even more visible in the northern suburbs of Paris, where many immigrant communities reside. Areas like Seine-Saint-Denis and La Courneuve are often unfairly labeled as danger zones. While not inherently unsafe, unfamiliar travelers might face increased risks, especially after dark, due to both petty crime and a heightened sense of tension. Paris remains a must-see destination. But if you're black, coming prepared, mentally and emotionally, for some uncomfortable moments may help you enjoy the city more realistically and safely. Have you ever felt like an outsider while traveling, just because of how you look? Share your story in the comments below. This is a space for honest voices and real experiences. Number 9. Berlin, Germany. A multicultural city with lingering stains. Berlin is often praised as a hub of diversity and freedom, but even here, certain social blind spots remain. In the city's outer districts, far-right nationalism and subtle xenophobia continue to quietly take root, creating invisible walls that not everyone can see, but many can feel. Recent studies from the German Institute for Democracy Research indicate a rising trend in racist incidents, from overt verbal harassment to subtle intimidation, and even minor assaults in public spaces. Districts like Neukölln, Wedding, and Marzahn-Hellersdorf frequently appear in security reports. Neukölln, known for its vibrant immigrant community, is a melting pot of cultures, but also a hotspot for street crime, especially after dark. Meanwhile, Marzahn-Hellersdorf has gained a reputation as a base for far-right sympathizers. This makes many black travelers and people of color feel uneasy walking alone, even during the day. Berlin isn't dangerous in the traditional sense, but if you're black, staying alert and knowing how to navigate uncomfortable social dynamics can make a big difference. It's the stares from strangers, the cold indifference, or the offhand comments laced with prejudice that catch you off guard, especially in a city so often advertised as open-minded and inclusive. Still, Berlin isn't a one-dimensional place. It's also filled with kind, progressive, and thoughtful people. Sometimes a warm conversation over coffee in Kreuzberg or a chance encounter with a friendly local can ease the heaviness that lingers. What matters most is knowing where you are, understanding how to respond, and always holding on to your self-worth. Have you ever been to Berlin? Did you feel real acceptance or just slogans painted on walls? Number 8. Warsaw, Poland. Eastern Europe's historic charm meets unpredictable realities for people of color. Warsaw, the capital of Poland, is often remembered for its post-war resilience, its stunningly reconstructed architecture, and a unique blend of old-world charm and modern energy. But for Black travelers, experiencing this city can sometimes feel like being a visible outlier in a sea of sameness. Poland is one of the most ethnically homogeneous countries in Europe. According to Eurostat data, over 96% of the population is ethnically Polish, making the presence of Black individuals rare. In a society with limited exposure to racial diversity, people of color often attract excessive attention, not always out of hostility, but often out of a deeply rooted sense of unfamiliarity. But it doesn't stop at curious stares. Some Black visitors have reported discriminatory remarks or subtle acts of exclusion, often coming from younger individuals influenced by nationalist ideologies. European human rights organizations have noted that while Poland doesn't have the highest rate of hate crimes, the country's increasingly conservative and anti-immigrant political climate has contributed to an environment that can feel uneasy or unwelcoming for people of color. If you're a Black tourist or international student, it's wise to stick with a group, especially when navigating crowded or emotionally charged settings, such as political demonstrations or football matches. These events can sometimes attract far-right supporters, where racially charged incidents are more likely to occur. That said, Warsaw is absolutely worth discovering. It's peaceful, affordable, and home to many respectful and courteous locals. But for travelers of color, understanding the local cultural and political context is key to having a safe and enjoyable experience. In a place where diversity is still emerging, your greatest tools are awareness, diplomacy, and the quiet confidence of knowing who you are and how to carry yourself with dignity. Number 7. Stockholm, Sweden. When peace doesn't always mean welcome. You might not be attacked in Stockholm, but that doesn't mean you'll feel welcome. For many Black travelers, the city doesn't feel socially safe. There's no overt violence, but a persistent sense of distance, coldness, and silent judgment can leave you feeling like you simply don't belong. From a security standpoint, Stockholm is one of the safest cities in Europe. Serious crimes are rare, and central areas are well managed. Yet for people of color, the real discomfort often comes from the emotional isolation, the subtle but constant reminder that you're other. Swedish society tends to be quiet and reserved, which can already feel isolating to outsiders. But for Black individuals, that cultural distance is often compounded by assumptions, namely, that you're either an immigrant or a refugee. This can lead to snap judgments that affect everything from first impressions to long-term opportunities. A study by the Swedish Institute of Social Research revealed that people with non-Scandinavian-sounding names are significantly more likely to be rejected for housing and job applications, even when their qualifications are equal. I applied to 20 companies. No one responded. But when I changed my name to Bjorn, I finally got a call back. Fatu, a software developer of Malian descent, sharing her experience in 2022. She 22. This story isn't rare. While racism in Stockholm may not manifest as open hostility, it often appears in the form of subtle exclusion, a silent wall that goes up the moment you board a train, submit a resume, or simply walk through a public square. Stockholm is still a great place to live, but for Black residents and travelers, it demands a level of patience, emotional strength, and cultural understanding that many others may never need to consider. Navigating this perfect city can feel like walking on clean ice, beautiful on the surface, but distant and hard beneath your feet. What do you think? Is Stockholm's quiet coldness just part of the culture, or is it an indirect form of exclusion? Number 6. Brussels, a multicultural capital caught between past injustice and present challenges. Brussels, the capital of Belgium and the administrative heart of the European Union, is a city where historic charm meets modern cosmopolitanism. Grand architecture and a bustling international atmosphere give the city a dynamic appeal. But behind the beauty lie deep-rooted social issues, especially those tied to colonial history and racial inequality. One of the most pressing concerns in Brussels is the unresolved legacy of Belgium's colonial past, particularly its brutal rule over Congo. Although decades have passed, the social inequalities inherited from that era remain largely unaddressed. These lingering effects are especially visible in the everyday lives of people of African descent, most notably the Congolese community. Many members of this community face systemic barriers in daily life, including widespread discrimination in hiring processes. Despite their qualifications, they are often excluded from professional opportunities due to entrenched biases in the labor market. In public service sectors like security and customer service, racial bias still shows itself through suspicious glances, dismissive attitudes, and outright disrespect. What makes this more tragic is the contradiction. Although Brussels has a large, culturally vibrant Black population that contributes significantly to the city's identity, these individuals are underrepresented in policymaking and leadership roles. Their influence in shaping the city's future remains disproportionately small. From a safety perspective, parts of central Brussels, especially near major train stations like Gare du Midi, are known for pickpocketing and petty crime. Both locals and tourists are advised to stay alert in these areas. Brussels stands as a powerful symbol of a Europe grappling with its own history. The city embodies the ideal of a multicultural society, yet still reflects the unfinished work of racial justice and inclusion. If Brussels hopes to become a true model of integration and equality, it must make greater strides, not just through government initiatives, but through collective societal effort. Only then can its diversity become a genuine source of strength, not a symbol of division. Number 5. London, where diversity doesn't always mean equality. As one of the most multicultural cities in the world, London is often celebrated as a vibrant meeting point of differences, a place where you might hear a dozen languages spoken in a single subway ride. But if you're Black, the reality of navigating this city isn't always as smooth as its inclusive image suggests. The large Black community in London doesn't necessarily translate to equal treatment. Racial discrimination still exists, sometimes overt, sometimes subtle, but undeniably present. Reports from human rights organizations and UK government data have consistently shown that Black individuals are far more likely to be stopped and searched by police than white individuals, even when no offense is suspected. That sense of being watched, doubted, or treated as a potential threat has become an everyday reality for many Black Londoners. It's not just a feeling, it's a pattern embedded in the city's policing culture. But the issue goes beyond security. inequality shows up just as clearly in housing and employment opportunities. Black candidates are often undervalued during recruitment, and when they do land a job, promotion and career progression aren't guaranteed. Meanwhile, the process of gentrification, urban redevelopment, has been steadily displacing Black communities from cultural hubs like Brixton and Peckham, pushing them farther from the city center as property prices rise and the social landscape changes. London remains an incredible city in many ways, rich in history, opportunity, and culture. But for Black residents and visitors, it demands a kind of constant awareness, a quiet strength, and the recognition that diversity does not always equal justice. Number 4. Athens, Greece. Ancient beauty. Modern eyes that haven't caught up. As the cradle of Western civilization, Athens draws millions of tourists each year with its rich history and classical architecture. But for those with darker skin, especially Black travelers, the experience in this city can often be mixed. And it's not because of the sights, but because of how society reacts to visible difference. The Black population in Athens is very small, making people of color particularly noticeable in everyday life. But visibility here doesn't always come with positive attention. Many visitors have described being stared at in public, receiving cold or dismissive treatment when asking for help, or even being randomly stopped by police with no clear reason. One of the underlying causes is the wave of migration to Europe over the past decade. Greece, still recovering from economic hardship, has seen a rise in xenophobic sentiment among some citizens. As a result, Black individuals, whether they are tourists, students, or legal immigrants, are often mistaken for refugees, which can lead to anything from social distancing to open hostility. Areas like Ammonia and Exarchia, though close to the city center, are frequently flagged for safety concerns, especially at night. These neighborhoods not only have higher rates of petty crime, but they're also known to be hotspots for clashes involving extremist groups. Athens remains a city of undeniable beauty and cultural significance. But for Black travelers, curiosity from others should be met with caution. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because, in this environment, being different often means being noticed more than you'd like. Number 3. Birmingham. The heart of Black culture and the unspoken contradictions. In Birmingham, often called the Black cultural capital of the UK, you'll see many Black faces on the streets. But visibility doesn't always mean equality. Despite being home to one of the largest and most influential Black communities in the country, many people of color in Birmingham still face frequent police stops, barriers to employment, and a constant feeling of being monitored. According to data from the human rights organization Liberty in the UK's Office for National Statistics, Black individuals in Birmingham are several times more likely to be stopped and searched by police than white individuals, often without clear cause. These so-called random checks happen so regularly that they've become normalized, contributing to a feeling of being watched and at times even criminalized simply for existing while Black. Certain neighborhoods, Aston, Handsworth, and Small Heath, hold deep cultural and historical significance for the Black community. Yet today, they are also areas with higher crime rates, particularly at night, prompting both locals and visitors to remain cautious when moving through them. On the economic and social front, bias in hiring and housing remains a significant obstacle. Many Black professionals, even with strong qualifications and experience, continue to face rejection in job applications or ambiguous denials when trying to rent a home. Subtle but systemic forms of exclusion. Birmingham is a city where Black cultural legacies have flourished, from music and food to activism and community strength. But paradoxically, It's also a place where Black individuals still fight daily to be seen, heard, and treated with fairness, not just during festivals or cultural celebrations, but in the basic rhythms of everyday life. Don't go anywhere just yet. What comes next might make you rethink everything you thought you knew about what it means to live in a multicultural society. Number 2, Marseille, a city of contrasts and critical gazes. Marseille can be lively, colorful, and full of energy, but for many Black individuals, it can also feel like a place where you're seen as a threat, even when all you're doing is walking down the street. The city's rich mix of cultures doesn't always translate into inclusivity. On the contrary, racial prejudice, social tension, and deep-rooted stereotypes have led many people of color to feel constantly under surveillance here. According to the latest data from Numbeo and reports by the French Ministry of the Interior, Marseille ranks among the cities with the highest crime rates in Western Europe. From muggings and drug trafficking to organized violence, security is a growing concern, not only for residents, but for tourists as well. And for Black individuals, there's a dual burden, facing both the risk of crime and being perceived as part of the problem. Random ID checks, suspicious stares from law enforcement, and discriminatory treatment in public services are all things that many people of color have experienced in this city. Northern districts such as the Quartiers Nord, home to large immigrant communities, are frequently labeled as no-go zones by the media and suffer from underinvestment, creating a stark divide between Marseille's center and its outskirts. Marseille may be a city where hundreds of cultures converge, but when diversity isn't met with fairness, that richness can actually become a source of social tension. For Black travelers, exploring Marseille isn't just about discovering a new place. It can feel like a test of resilience, a challenge to navigate a space full of contradictions between the promise of freedom and the presence of invisible walls. If you're Black, would you feel safe enough to explore Marseille after dark? Number 1, Naples, a vibrant city that still struggles with fairness. If you're Black and excited to explore Naples, you might want to read this before you pack your bags. Naples is known as the birthplace of pizza, a Mediterranean gem full of energy, historic charm, and winding alleys that seem to echo with life. But for many people of color, its beauty can feel clouded by a fog of bias and invisible barriers. I was just waiting for a friend outside a store when a security guard came out and looked me up and down like I was a problem. Jean-Paul, a tourist from Cameroon, recalling his experience on Via Toledo, 23. The city has a reputation for pickpocketing and street theft, especially around the central train station and the historic Spacca-Napoli district, something most tourists are warned about. But for Black travelers, the challenge goes deeper. It's not just about crime. It's the suspicious glances from police, the random ID checks, and the chilly demeanor of service staff that make you feel singled out. I was asked for my passport just for browsing souvenirs, while the white woman next to me was invited to try perfume samples. Lena, a Ghanaian student, sharing her experience at a shop in Piazza Garibaldi. This issue isn't limited to tourists. Many African immigrants living in Naples face daily hardships. Undocumented labor, unsafe housing conditions, and lack of legal employment contracts create a cycle of vulnerability. In jobs like dishwashing, hauling, or food delivery, exploitation is common, and most of the time, the victims are undocumented or newly arrived Black migrants. The exploitation is quiet but persistent, and legal protections often fail to reach those most in need. The world is wide, beautiful, and full of wonders, but not every place opens its arms to everyone. For Black travelers, a trip abroad isn't always just about rest and discovery. Sometimes it becomes a test of a city's true tolerance. This video, 12 Cities That Don't Welcome Black Travelers, The travel truth no one talks about isn't meant to spread fear. It's meant to help you prepare, stay informed, and protect yourself and your loved ones. If you believe topics like these deserve more attention, hit that subscribe button and join us as we explore the world with open eyes and awakened hearts. This content is for educational and awareness purposes only. It does not represent the political views of any organization. Let's approach these topics with thoughtful, open minds.